Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we're going to discuss about the natural approach. And this method focuses on the teaching communicative abilities in terms of the acquired and then the rules and then try to monitor and then there's an input hypothesis and the rest of the process. So we're going to move on. As we move on to the topic, we're going to discuss the theories behind the natural approach and also how it can be seen in the language classroom. So we'll be proceeding now. All right. So when we talk about the language or the natural approach under the language classroom is that the theories behind this type of approach is Krashen and Terrell. So Krashen and Terrell, Krashen particularly identified that you learn the language through what L1 is equals L2. So how you learn the L1 is the same thing with how you learn the L2. So they try to use natural method in terms of understanding the language itself. So how do you try to look at the portion of the natural method or natural approach? So when we talk about traditional approach, what you only do is you use the language and communicative situation without the recourse of the native language. So in the traditional approach, you just basically use the language itself in the communicative situation. On the other hand, when we talk about natural method, this is consisting of teacher exchanging question and answer between the instructor and the pupil in the target language. And also under natural approach, it is believed to conform to the naturalistic principles found in the second language acquisition, that you try to use rules while learning the language itself. So under the theory of the natural approach, they try to see communication as the primary function of language. So if you're going to look at the natural approach, they try to use communicative approach so that they try to get the competence of learners in terms of the use of language. So the emphasis of the language learning here at the natural approach is more of meaning. So language is viewed as vehicle for communication meaning and messages. So acquisition can only take place only when people understand the messages and in the target language. So therefore, they try to look into the mastery of structure, mastery of rules, and grounded with how you learn the second language. How you try to acquire the second language. So under this theory or under this approach, you follow the steps or the process. One, there is an acquisition or the learning hypothesis. Second one is the monitor hypothesis. The third one is the natural order hypothesis. And then the next one is the input hypothesis. And then the next one is the affective hypothesis. Now, what do you mean by acquisition or learning hypothesis? Under acquisition, meaning the learners have the unconscious process involving the natural development of language proficiency, meaning they are exposed with a second language that they are going to have using the language for meaningful communication. So here, learning really refers to understanding rules. They have the consciousness of rules about a language that are developed. And learning cannot only lead to just acquiring the language through exposure. So they need to learn the rules so that they will learn about, language itself. So after that, trying to look at the rules, they try to monitor that one, monitor in a way that the students try to monitor their progress. So so therefore they try to look into the time, focus on the form, knowledge of the rules. Okay. So here at the natural order hypothesis, the acquisition of grammar proceeds into a predictable order. So trying to look at the developmental process and the acquisition of developmental errors in learners, not matter with what their mother tongue is, because the focus of them is the target language. So after that, so that's the natural order hypothesis. So after getting the acquiring, trying to pattern it with the rules. After that one, you try to have the natural order in a way that you try to look and develop it through time. And after that, there is what you call input hypothesis. So Input hypothesis relates to acquisition and not to learning, meaning as you try to use it, as you try to acquire it and getting the rules, and then after that, people acquire language best by understanding input when they are already, emerged with speaking fluently, independently, consistently within the conversation. So after that, when the students are knowledgeable and confident uh, about the learning, about the rules, about the acquisition, the learner's emotional state is being adjusted in a way that they can freely express themselves, and then blocks input that are necessary to acquisition. So there are three kinds of affective variables. One, they are being motivated, they are being self-confident, having a self-confidence, and then also having the anxiety. So these three works hand in hand when the students are not really learn it's either when, for example, the vocabulary is somewhat not familiar with that, they become anxious about it, or they become motivated with trying to be confident on the rules and then try to apply it. So these five hypotheses have implications for language teaching. So as much that you have knowledge about comprehensible input, as much comprehensible input as possible must be presented, meaning they need to be knowledgeable about the language input so that comprehension can really smoothly be utilized. So the focus in the classroom should be on listening and reading, and student work should center on meaningful communication, meaningful conversation. So the design of the natural approach is that for it is very applicable for beginners because they were taught rules and designed to help them become intermediate to the next level. The specific objectives depend also upon the learners and the skill and level being taught. So Krashen and Terrell identify this as it is important to communicate to learners what they can expect. So there is what you call learning expectations as they run through with the rules, as they run through with the structure, and what are the things that they should not expect, the limitation of the topics that are about to have. Now, the syllabus of the natural approach course comes from 2 points. One, there should be a goal for the language courses. Second one is a purpose of language course should vary according to the needs of the students. So these are the types of learning and teaching activities under the natural approach. Particularly, it emphasizes on presenting comprehensible input in the target language. So what do you mean by comprehensible input? Meaning comprehensible rules in the target language, meaning there is a discussion, there is, behind rules that are being taught to our students. So learners are not required to say anything until they feel ready. So that is under a natural approach. So therefore, the teacher provides comprehensible language and simple response opportunities for our learners. So the teachers talk slowly and distinctly, asking questions on eliciting one-word answers. Acquisition activities are very emphasized. Pair or group work also may be employed, and techniques recommended by Krashen and Terrell are often borrowed from other methods and adapted. So sometimes they try to use the work method, utilizing the natural approach. So what are the roles of learners here? The language are just seen as a processor of the comprehensible input, meaning from the things that they have learned from the rules itself, they try to negotiate it and then try to use it, and then try to look, at the competence of utilizing it. So the learner's role also here seem to change according to their stage of linguistic development. So of course, when it's a level 1 or grade 1, they have a different way of how they try to learn in terms of a natural approach. Moving on to the grade 11. So the activities varies depending on the level of the students in terms of the rules that they have learned already. So the pre-production stage, students participate in the language activity without having to respond in the target language, because here, what they do only is they just answer based on the given question. So at the early production stage, students respond to either or a question. And then for the speech emergent phase, students involve themselves in role play and games. So if you're going to look at it, the social cultural, and then the cognitive development are also presented into the different stages. So in the natural approach, they are very particular on what the learners can do depending on the different stages. So learners have four kinds of responsibilities. I'm sorry if there are typographical error with the presentation because I just have adapted it from the Google. But learners have four kinds of responsibilities. One, they need to provide information about the specific goals that they are about to learn. Take an active role in ensuring comprehensible input because without their participation, definitely it would be hard for them to understand the input or the language input that they have or that they need to learn. So they need to decide also when to start producing speech and when to upgrade it. So I think one way that you can utilize for the natural approach is the trainings that we have. If you're familiar with IELTS, mostly some of them are under the natural approach. So we're learning exercises are to be part of the program. So the teacher's role here is the teacher is the primary source of the comprehensible input of the target language. He creates a classroom atmosphere that is interesting, and he orchestrates a rich mix of classroom activity. So the primary goal of the natural approach is that to make classroom activities as meaning as possible. They promote comprehension and communication because without the preparation and without the understanding of the students, it would be hard for them to level up. So monitoring within the natural approach is very important. So selection, reproduction, and collection of materials are considerable burden on the natural approach teacher because they are into monitoring. So the procedure, Krashen and Terrell provide suggestions for the use of wide range of activities which are familiar components. The situational language teaching, the communicative language teaching are under also by natural approach, meaning they try to use the language focus while they are trying to put it in a conversation. Here, for the pre-stage, they start with TPR commands and then they move on already with the situational and then the communicative language teaching. So use TPR to teach names of body parts and to introduce. So if you're going to look at it, you're very familiar with the setting of elementary student. They try to use TPR, or the preschool students, they try to use TPR, and then they introduce classroom terms and props into commands. So after that, they use names of physical characteristics, clothing, use visual to typically magazine picture, combine use of pictures with TPR, combine observations, commands, and conditional using several pictures also. So that is what we mean by the natural approach. So a natural approach is basically more of looking into the systematic approach on how learning should be presented and utilized by the learner. So it's very important in the language or in the natural approach, the level of learner, so that you will understand what are the comprehensible input that will be given to our dear learners. And then you need to have a monitoring of their progress so that you will know if they will be advancing already. I guess that would be all for our natural approach. I hope you understand something about it, and then let me know if you did not understand about the approach itself. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat.